Welcome to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living with your host, Rosalyn Sadaqa. Join Rosalind each week on a journey toward overcoming life's many challenges to achieve peace, empowerment, and positive transformation. It's time to relax, unwind, and transform your life with Rosalyn Sadaqa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Going Solo Network, WGSN-DB, and you're listening to Rosalyn Sadaqa on Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living. Today we're going to be talking about an important topic for those of you who are facing divorce, in the midst of divorce, or co-parenting after divorce, and that's talking to your kids about divorce. It's really a challenge for anyone, no matter what your educational background, no matter where you live and your age. You'll have challenges when it comes to talking to children about divorce, also talking to grandchildren about divorce. It's a tough topic for adults. It's even tougher for children. And today I wanted to explore some of the facets that can make it easier for you to approach the topic and have some of the listening skills that every adult needs when venturing into the divorce arena. As a divorced parent, you can never pay too much attention to your communication skills with your children. That's so for all parents, but it's especially so when you're dealing with divorce, because it's important that you keep the doors open to a healthier, more positive relationship with your children. They especially need you whenever they're facing dramatic life challenges, and divorce is among one of the most dramatic for children. And it's important that you're sensitive to the various issues and concerns related to divorce early on so you could nip them in the bud. So if you're noticing that your child is misbehaving, acting out, withdrawing, getting depressed, or behaving in ways that are different from their norm, you want to address them immediately, either yourself or with the help of a divorce coach or a therapist or an educator, guidance counselor, someone who can be there with you on your team to help you make the best decisions. And every professional, on one way or another, will encourage your children to talk to you about what they're feeling and have you encourage your children to do that, because you need to know what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, what questions they have, and what situations are creating conflict for them, or fear or anxiety, apprehension, insecurities, doubts, all of those things that come up and are natural and normal for children. So as parents, we all know that talking to our kids about important things is not always easy. And we can't just sit down and say, okay, let's talk. It's hard to do that with our spouses and other people we know and love and care about. It's even harder with our children when we're talking about uncomfortable situations. So one of the guidelines that most people agree about is parents need to find comfortable times and comfortable places where a conversation can flow naturally and easily. And then you can start to bring up related subjects in a casual way. So sometimes it could be something as simple as watching TV or a movie at home, because that often can be a catalyst for a valuable conversation. And you can either put the show or movie on hold for a few minutes and talk about it, or you could make a mental note, and then right after the show or movie ends, you could say, by the way, what did you think about the way Steve handled that particular situation? Or do you think John did the right thing when he did such and such? And you could open the door to having a conversation and bring up related subjects in a casual way. It works really, really effectively because it's just coming out of a normal conversation. I remember when my son was growing up, Oprah was on every day for me, and at certain times I would sit him down in front of the show and let him watch it if it was a show relevant to adolescents or teenagers or sex or dating or something like that, because we could talk about it And often he would get input from an expert other than his mother, who has much more credibility to him than his own mother would. Another effective place to have these conversations is while driving in the car together. You may be running errands or taking them home from school, and you could sort of open the door to discussion or asking questions and sharing feelings, because they're sort of in that environment, and if you open the door in the right way, the door to that conversation in the right way, they may be more focused on what you're saying with less distractions around them, and they may be able to answer the question. And then you need to really hone your communication skills with children, which means letting them talk, letting them vent, even if they're saying something you don't want to hear, not making them wrong, even if they're making a mistake, rather than saying, no, that's not true, using the reflective listening approach of saying, so what you're telling me is I never listen to you when you complain about our eating times because it interferes with your practice. Is that right? And let them validate or verify that information for you so that it's really clear. And if they say something like, and I hate the guy you're dating now, you want to jump in and defend him or defend your decision, and instead you need to acknowledge the fact that, wow, it sounds like you're really angry about Dave. Tell me more. Why do you dislike him so much? And listen. Hear what's going on, because you can learn a lot from what your children are feeling. And then you can correct them after you've acknowledged what they're saying and clarifying that you understand their feelings about it. Then you could say, well, the truth is such and such, and from my perspective, it's this and that. And then you could have a conversation. But the important part of conversations is always that we listen more than we lecture, because as parents we feel entitled to be the lecturer, to be the expert, to be the knowledgeable person, and we don't give our kids credibility for having a valid feeling or argument or perspective. And even if their perspective is immature or not very aware, it's theirs. It's how they feel. And when we discount how they feel, we're discounting them on their level. It feels that way to them. And we close the door to communication, and then you get those responses, oh, never mind, or it doesn't matter, or whatever you say, because they're frustrated and they don't feel that they can be heard. So I can't stress how important it is to make sure your children feel heard, even if you don't like what you're hearing, and that you acknowledge what they're saying, even if it isn't something that you want to hear, and then address it in a respectful way. I hope that resonates with you and that you're willing to listen in for some more information. I have some tips that can help you ease into more productive communication with your kids. The first one is asking why can be intimidating and can close off a conversation. Very often as parents, after we hear something, we say, why do you feel that way? And kids don't really have an answer always to why. So instead of asking why questions, ask what happened questions, which are much more likely to keep the dialogue open. They can tell you what happened, and they can tell you what their feelings about what happened were if you're getting a dialogue opened much more readily than being able to answer why. They may not know the motivation of why they did something, but if they can tell you what they did, and they can tell you what was going on with them to make them feel that that was the right thing to do. So asking why is not the right way to go. Instead, ask what happened questions to keep the dialogue open. Also, be patient. It's important that as parents we don't react or even respond until we get the full message. Sometimes it takes a lot of meandering for your child to reach the crucial point of what they're really trying to say. Kids are not really adept at communication, especially the younger ones. And they may meander around and around until you really are hearing the essence of what's what. But it's worth the time, because very often we shut them off too soon. They're not saying anything meaningful, and we move on, and we've missed the important thing of what's going on behind the scenes, or what they're really, really feeling. So be patient, be helpful, and by paraphrasing what they're saying, sometimes that's effective in letting them hear what you just heard, and then they can correct it and say it in another way or a better way until you really get it. Because everyone, even little children, want to be heard and understood and acknowledged for having a valid point of view. Remember also that preaching, moralizing, or making those traditional parenting comments often just put up barriers to clear communication with your kids. They get turned off. And when your kids are turned off, you know that the door is shut, and no matter what you say or how you try to pry it open, it's not going to happen. So rather than lecturing, preaching, or moralizing, or providing the parenting comments, you do it because I say so, I'm the mother, those kinds of things. They just turn kids off. Listening is your most valuable skill and most valuable tool. And the better you are at listening, and that goes with all communications, even with your former spouse or relationship partners, it's really a key to a successful relationship is listening. Another strong suggestion is to watch your judgments and put-downs, even when you're hearing upsetting information. Obviously, if someone is putting you on the defensive or accusing you of something, it's easy to get upset, and it's easy to jump into defending yourself or making judgments and putting them down. How dare you say that when you're even worse? And we go tit for tat in those kinds of arguments. But it's very important, especially when talking to children, that we catch ourselves and we be the adult role models. Keep that in mind always. There's only one adult role model in that relationship, and it has to be you or you and your spouse. And we can't expect the children to behave as adults. So don't belittle your children, because that hurts them at the core. Don't call them names or insult their behaviors. You're turning them off. They're losing respect for you, and that can be a lifetime to reclaim. Instead, you want to talk to them, not at them. Talk to them, not at them. There is a big difference, and the difference is felt as respect. When you talk to them, you're acknowledging them as an individual. Just because they're younger or small doesn't mean they don't count or that their feelings are invalid. So if you're talking at them, you're just parenting at them. You're proclaiming things, and they may not be feeling very respected. And children get resentful as they grow up. When they don't feel respected as individuals, that's when they start misbehaving and using their power in any way to get back at their parents. And once you move into that stage, you're in a very ugly situation that's difficult to undo. Also, it's wise to acknowledge your children for coming to you. So if they do approach you with a complaint or an issue or a situation or something they're upset about, be sure to acknowledge them and thank them for coming to you and praise their braveness for having that conversation, because a lot of kids don't and won't, and you want to encourage it, so you want to encourage it with positive feedback. And if you were at fault in any way, apologize honestly and discuss how you can make changes for the future. Remember, you are the role model, and if they could see mom or dad apologizing for something that they did or said poorly, or a behavior that they made that hurt the child, and if you can acknowledge it and apologize for it, then you're showing your children that we all make mistakes, even grown-ups, and that we can say we're sorry, and then we could forgive one another. If you never do that, why would you expect your children to be honest and apologize when they misbehave? how could we expect that from them if they're never getting that as a role model? And one other thing that I want to mention in this section is show that you accept and love them, even if their behaviors were not acceptable. There's a difference between misbehavior and being a bad child, and most of the time it's a good child that you love who's misbehaving. So they need to see that you accept them and you love them even when they misbehave, and then help them come up with some acceptable solutions that they can understand and feel good about so that they could move on and know that they can talk to you again. And that's such an important thing for them to understand and feel comfortable about. We're going to take a short break now. You're listening to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, with Rosalyn Sadaqa on divorce, dating, and empowered living.
Oh, no, it's that time again. It's tax time. Want to save some money? Call the ABC, CPA, Accounting, Bookkeeping, Consulting, and they will help you. Their phone number is 813-335-1878, theabc-cpa.com.
Hello, everyone. We're back. This is Rosalyn Sedacca with WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. You're listening to Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living, and we're talking today about talking to children of divorce, whether it's before, during, or long after divorce, and giving them the opportunity to talk to you and understanding what's going on with them. I just want to remind you that when you're having any conversation with your children, it's essential to put yourself in your child's place, and then you will most likely make wiser decisions when it comes to talking about sensitive issues in their lives and areas and conversations that are difficult, like breaking divorce news to children, introducing children to a new relationship partner in your life, telling children about changes that are going to happen in their life and in their schedule and in their living situation as a result of divorce, or making decisions about whether mom or dad is going to have more or less time with the children at different phases of their life. These are difficult conversations, and you want to always be sensitive and get down on their level, talk to them eyeball to eyeball when you can, and put yourself in their shoes so you can feel what it's like to be 6 or 16 or 26. And if you're afraid to talk about touchy subjects, then get some help from a counselor first or a coach, because you could have dialogue with them and you could rehearse difficult conversations, whether you rehearse them in your head or whether you rehearse them with a professional. It really is helpful because it helps you get comfortable. It helps you get into the subject matter, know what you're going to say, remember the crucial points, and that you don't let them down. And most important of all is always remembering that when you're talking to your children, you must be the role model for them, because if you're not the role model, who is? And that can be very dangerous. So I wanted to also address the fact that when you're talking to children, sometimes we could expect different behaviors at different ages. And as children get older, they feel their oats more. And after age, say, 8 or 9 or 10, they have more expression of anger and resentment. It's much more prevalent for them. And anger gives a child a sense of control on some level. So don't be surprised if suddenly you're going to be getting an angry response when you're telling your child something, especially when it's about something as dramatic as a divorce, changing situations in their lives, making moves or living lifestyle changes and things like that. We have to be aware that kids are going to vent, and they're also going to express their emotions in a strong way. So they may be crying much more hysterically than you're used to seeing, and they may be much more emotional and much more sensitive. And usually the younger children respond more with the sadness and the the grief and the despair, and the older children move more into the anger because they feel it's a more powerful way of expressing what they're feeling. But either way, your children are trying to express feelings that are difficult to feel and express. And we also want to be aware that children have a tendency to see life in a much more black and white perspective than adults. We are aware that most things have layers and layers of gray area, and that nothing is black and white. And the blame, especially in a divorce, is usually not just black and white, one person versus the other person being right or wrong. It usually takes two to tango. But for children, it's harder to see that. And so very often they may side with one parent and blame one parent dramatically. And it's important for us not to encourage that, especially if it isn't true, so that we don't alienate our children from their other parent who loves them and who they need so much. We also want to make sure that children don't think of divorce as a rejection of them personally. Children do have a tendency to blame themselves for divorce. Even if you tell them otherwise, they have a tendency to feel the world revolves around them. They're very much more narcissistic and egocentric than adults, which is normal for them as a child. So there's nothing abnormal about that. But in their worldview, if mommy and daddy are fighting, especially if they were fighting about the children, fighting about discipline and behavior issues and school issues and things like that, it's easy for the child to think, if I wasn't a bad child, or if I didn't get bad grades, or if I wasn't fighting with my brother, maybe mom and dad wouldn't be splitting up. And it's important to understand that, so you keep reminding them that they are not at fault no matter what. And sometimes your child will try to grow up overnight and try to insist that you treat them like an adult, and they ask for detailed information about the failure of the relationship or the divorce. And we have to remember as parents never to provide adult information to children as much as they may want to demand it. They cannot comprehend the complexity on an emotional, psychological level of what's going on in this situation. And so giving them information about dad having an affair or mom being addicted to opiates is not helping in any way. And you want to remember that if a child can't do anything about a situation, then they shouldn't have access to that information, adult information. It just isn't proper for them. What it does is rob them of their childhood. They get emotionally robbed of their childhood and suddenly have information that they can't handle, and it forces them to step into being little adults. And you never go back. Once you're a little adult and you start protecting your mom or your dad and taking care of them and worrying about them, your childhood is lost. The innocence of childhood is lost. And so it's very important for you to protect their childhood and let them move on as much as possible in the day-to-day reality of what it is that they're doing despite the divorce, and not change their lives because of the divorce. And then they need to be reminded that you will always love them and that you will always be their parents regardless of the divorce. Even if another party is in the picture, even if one or both of you remarry, their biological parents will still always be their parents. And you also want to remind them that they are safe and that you are working the details out and continue to work the details out long after the divorce into the co-parenting years, and that they're going to be safe and taken care of. And then, of course, you have to be mature enough to live up to that so that you can take care of all the details in a mature, responsible adult way. So this is a difficult conversation with children. And, of course, the age of the child will affect the language that you use to talk to them. And also the level of maturity will affect the language of the way you speak to them. Because you don't want to go into any more depth and answer questions beyond the level of what the children are asking. It's like learning about sex. You don't talk to a 4-year-old about sex the way you talk to a 14-year-old about sex, and you don't want to be providing more details because the children are not there to solve your problems. If you have issues, then you seek out the support of professionals. Never use your children as confidants. They're not your best friends and shouldn't be. They're not your confidants, and you want to find ways of framing your answers so that they're age appropriate and emotionally appropriate for your child, and no one knows your child better than you. So I want to review about listening and knowing that when you listen to your child and you paraphrase back what they're saying to you, you're on the road to learning more and hearing more from them. And when you allow them to correct you and say, no, that's not what I mean, and then they say something else, this is gold. These are gems of information that you may not have had you not done this. Now you're getting a little more clarification as to their thinking, and you may get an aha moment. Oh, my God, I didn't think that little Johnny was thinking about that or worrying about that or so upset about that. And once you have that information, you're going to parent in a more effective way because of it. So please take the time to listen, to paraphrase, to clarify, to apologize when appropriate, and to be clear and articulate when you talk to your children. And don't expect them to adapt immediately to dramatic changes in their life about whose house they're going to be in for this holiday and angry at them for forgetting to bring this and that along with them from home to home. Mistakes are going to happen. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to need patience. Everyone's going to need to cooperate and be flexible and loving because this is a dramatic change for everyone in the family, children and adults. But you can do a good job. You can be a parent role model that you can be proud of in what you're doing, and you could give your children a happy, healthy, positive future despite any challenge that they go through, because they're looking to you for the emotional mirror, the emotional reflection of how to cope with difficulties in life. And if you're overwhelmed with grief and weeping and sad and despondent, or filled with anger and rage and no ability to forgive, or riddled with judgment and always looking for the dark side, or alienating your children against their other parent just because it feels so good to vent and letting them hear about what a terrible person that parent is, all of those things do damage to your children. All of those things can be and should be avoided. So I know this was a lot to digest, and I hope it was of value to you and to anyone you know who is going through the throes of divorce before, during, or after. Please share this with them. And I welcome any questions you have. You can reach me, Rosalyn Sadaqa. I'm a certified divorce and parenting coach and dating and relationship coach. And you could find me at childcentereddivorce.com. You could email me at rosalind@childcentereddivorce.com. And you could also visit womendatingrescue.com and mensdatingformula.com for valuable resources on being single and finding a healthy new love relationship that is going to be happier and more fulfilling for you in the long term. So thank you once again for listening. And this is Rosalyn Sadaqa on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living, and I hope you'll be tuning in again. Bye-bye for now.